You've probably seen this look before. Velvet sofas, mismatched chairs, moody lighting, vintage rugs. That's what I'm calling the Soho House vibe. Because Soho House isn't just a hotel chain, it's an international design influence. Everyone seems to be copying it, but no one has explained exactly why it works. So today I'm breaking it down. What makes Soho House feel so good, and how they pull off something that's cozy, sexy, and timeless all at the same time. So the first thing I want to talk about here is that regardless of which Soho House you're at anywhere in the world, the furniture is always mismatched, but it still feels perfect. Every piece of furniture in Soho House, or just about every piece, is different. But at the same time, nothing feels random, and that's the trick here. For example, here, this boucle chair adds some softness and shape to the space, while the leather ottoman brings a pop of color and sheen. And then having these three different materials here with boucle, the stone, and the leather all in the same environment gives the space layers without any one piece dominating the atmosphere. Now, at the same time, nothing here matches in finish or style, but it works because the palette stays warm and neutral, and there's really only one accent color with this bright pop of yellow. Even the side table and bench here don't match, but they're still unified by tone and scale because they're both low, they're both grounded. And this is how Soho House makes mismatched look luxurious, because it's all about mixing shapes, textures, and tones, not randomly, but intentionally. Now, as you can see in this image, a lot of the seating options are different, but they still share the same earthy, muted color range of terracotta, burgundy, olive, navy. So the color palette is actually what pulls things together. You know, the sofa here is curvy and plush, while the chairs are more upright and angular. And again, that contrast of shapes adds movement without adding any chaos to the space. Now, I also want to point out this coffee table, which is massive, but also really low. So it acts as a bit of an anchor for the surrounding furniture so that the furniture doesn't feel like it's just floating in a particular space. But another thing I love about this particular room are the exposed ceilings and columns, which add some grit and structure to offset the softness of all the seating, right? This is kind of a classic Soho House tension of rough meets refined. Now, this is one of the bedrooms, and so you can see, again, the bed, the chairs, and the side table all come from totally different design languages, but the mix here feels thoughtful and not forced. This arched velvet headboard adds some softness and structural shape, so it is a bit dramatic without being overly loud. Then the floral chairs bring in a totally different style and pattern from the rest of the room, which is a bit playful, you know, pretty cozy, and definitely a little bit retro, but they still feel like they belong to the same shared earth tones that you see in the rest of the space. And then this wooden nightstand adds some warmth and a bit of vintage texture, which breaks up all the softness of the textiles. And again, in my view, this is just classic Soho House. Nothing feels generic, but the whole room still feels peaceful and layered. Okay, so the second thing that really stands out to me about Soho houses is that the lighting just feels like a movie set. Okay, so as you can see here, the lighting is coming from at least 4 different sources that I can see. We've got ceiling pendants, mini table lamps, the wall sconces, and these soft globe light bulbs which are hanging over the bar. And the overhead pendants are huge, but they're smoky glass, so they still glow without dominating the space. And I'm sure you've also noticed that every light is giving off a warm tone, so it makes the entire space feel dim and golden and just intimate in a way that's really refreshing. And so it's worth pointing out that this isn't mood lighting that was added as an afterthought. The lighting itself is the mood. Now in this room, you can see that every table has its own tiny mushroom lamp, which gives each seating area its own small bit of glow without relying too much on overheads. Then the bar lamps are stacked like totems, and they're almost sculptural pieces in themselves, so the lighting doubles as decor at the same time. And you can see that the warm light is bouncing off of these bold materials in this room, right? The marble countertops, the dark wood throughout the room, the velvet chairs. So everything feels cozy, but also animated at the same time. And these ceiling pendants, to me, they look like inverted tulips, so they add a bit of a soft, whimsical vibe with no harsh edges and definitely no cold light anywhere. And then in this image, it's a little more old school Soho House, where the vibe comes from warm pools of light and not from centerpieces. And you can see here that the chandelier is definitely formal, but it's still not cold, and it's softened by the glow of the matching shaded lamps sitting on the table below. What I find interesting here is that none of these lights feel installed, so everything looks like it could be moved, just like you're in someone's home. And the room stays quiet and grounded because the light never overwhelms the darker tones in the room. We've got this dark bookshelf at the back, the dark wood paneling on the right side here. The lighting actually just supports them rather than drowning them out. Okay, now the third thing that really stands out to me about Soho houses, and I'm always impressed with this with every house that I step into all over the world, is that their bathrooms look better than your living room. So here in this bathroom, you can see it ditches the typical sink setup and just uses a custom wood cabinet with a sculpted inlay, making it more like a furniture piece than an actual vanity. The lighting in the bathroom is soft and atmospheric, so it's the furthest thing from a bright white bar light, right? Instead, it's mood-driven sconces in these golden tones next to the mirror. And so the mix of the high gloss tile, the warm wood, and this matte paint creates texture in the room without shouting or being loud at all. And even the mirror shape adds some character, right? It's a little more organic, it's reflective, no pun intended, and it's completely unique to the room. I've never seen a mirror in this specific shape before, and I probably never will again. Now again, in this second bathroom, the vanity feels like a luxury furniture piece. It doesn't feel like a built-in. It's got these beautiful curved drawers, the delicate legs, and this rich wood grain that just instantly elevates it above your typical cabinetry. Now, one thing I love about this one is that the marble backsplash is just integrated perfectly. So instead of going for something like a tiled wall, they just added this softly curved marble slab that echoes the shape of the vanity and just feels completely seamless in this space. Like I said for the last bathroom, and I guess this is a trend of its own, the mirrors here are just really playful, right? They're not the expected rectangle, and by using a unique shape, they soften the space and they match the curves of the wood below perfectly. And then again, just like always, the lighting is flattering and moody. It's not overhead, but it's just flanking these mirrors with warm sconces that make the space feel more like a powder room in a boutique hotel than your typical bathroom. And if we look at the third one here, again, the vanity is bold and sculptural, right? It's using these fluted wood drawers that feel almost like an architectural piece, like stacked beams or carved logs standing on top of each other. And these handles are really small. I didn't even quite know what they were in the beginning, but they've got these brass triangles that pop against the warm wood grain, and it creates this really striking contrast between the two different materials. Now, again, I can't speak about this bathroom without mentioning the mirror, right? It's playful, it's decorative, and it's got this coiled detail which echoes the curves of the vanity. And so overall, the palette here is earthy, but it's also elevated, right? It's got these beautiful greens on the left and on the right here, but especially the left with this plant, these terracotta tiles, the herringbone floors, and all the brass accents that really just ground the space as somewhere that feels natural and just really homey. All right, and so the fourth thing that really impresses me about Soho houses is that the art is everywhere, but it's never boring. And so what you're seeing here is from the Brighton Beach House, and what we've got is a pool that is itself becoming the artistic canvas. All right, it's turning a functional space into a bold, permanent piece of art. So the oversized banana here is obviously playful and inspired by pop art, but it's also framed by this chic tile and the greenery of the rooftop, which creates this interesting juxtaposition of kind of formality and informality that Soho House has just done really well over the years. And then the text here, which you may not be able to read, it says, "The moment has arrived, the banana is ripe." So it's turning it into something a little more conceptual, not just decorative, so it makes you think a little bit, right? what moment has arrived, what does it mean that the banana is ripe, these kinds of things. Now, in this next space, we've got a full row of muted matte frames, which gives some rhythm to an otherwise dark and moody seating area. Each of these images is different, but it's all unified by the tone and the lighting surrounding them, so they really feel like their own collection. Now, what's more interesting to me about these specific art pieces is that they actually show some restraint. You know, not every moment in Soho House needs to be bold, even though we have seen a lot of bold designs already, but instead some of them are quiet, archival, and just more classic. Now, speaking of bold art pieces, we do have a couple more here. You know, as you can see, none of the pieces match. They're all different styles, different sizes, different frames, but that contrast is what actually gives this wall its edge, right? The art feels collected, not necessarily curated. It's almost as if the art grew there over time. And the backdrop really matters here. You know, this distressed brick wall adds some texture and grit that just give this entire space a little bit more personality. Now, this one I find really interesting. This is from the Soho House in Portland. It's not a painting, it's not a photo, it's actually entirely textile and kind of sculptural. You know, the frame here that this art piece is sitting in is architectural, right? We've got this kind of recess in from the main wall, and so the art is actually built into the room itself. And so I would say that this shows that art doesn't need to be traditional, right? Materials and craft are just as valid at setting a piece of art apart. And now this one I find pretty interesting as well. So the art here is hung over antique mirrors, which creates some layers of reflection, texture, and light. It's not as bright as it would be if the mirrors were clean and new, but because they're old and pretty distressed, you know, the light kind of bounces and moves in unique ways. Each of these pieces is suspended on small chains, so it embraces the installation as part of the art aesthetic. And interestingly, nothing here uses the same frames, so to me, this setup proves that you don't need to put art on a white wall, right? You can create an art moment out of something recycled or out of something new. So what do we take from all this? For me, one of my takeaways is that Soho House interiors work because they feel personal, not because they feel perfect. And so they're constantly balancing restraint with richness, and so the end result is something that's not loud, but it's also never plain. And that specific balance, in my view, is what makes these spaces so enticing and what makes so many people want to copy them for their own. So I hope you enjoyed this small peek into the design aesthetic of Soho House. If you did, leave a comment, let me know what stood out to you, and if you want to see more videos like this, then feel free to subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.